to strengthen democracy.
Hello and welcome. I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines of the hour. Donald Trump and Colombian President Gustavo Petro are to meet at the White House for the first time. The talks test whether the two leaders can find common ground despite sharp ideological differences. A drone attack by Sudan's Rapid Support Forces hits a health centre in Kadugli, killing 8 civilians, including 3 children. The strike comes after hours. The army breaks a siege of the city and says most drones are shot down. Syrian forces begin entering the Kurdish-majority city of Qim under a ceasefire deal with Kurdish-led forces. State media says the units are moving in to implement the agreement and take up security duties. Russia says it is ready for a world without US-Russia nuclear arms limits as the START new treaty expires this week. Without a last-minute deal, both sides lose all constraints on strategic nuclear arsenals for the first time in over 50 years. The Kremlin says it has heard no word from India about halting Russian oil purchases despite Donald Trump's claim. Trump says a new trade deal cuts US tariffs on Indian goods to 18% in return for India stopping Russian oil and lowering trade barriers. Zelensky says Russia fires over 70 missiles and 450 drones at Ukraine, accusing Moscow of choosing escalation over diplomacy. Strikes damage Kiev landmarks and energy sites, leaving more than 1,000 tower blocks without heating as temperatures drop. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte arrives in Kiev hours after Russia launches its largest drone and missile attack of the year. Zelensky shares video of both leaders honouring fallen Ukrainian soldiers at a central memorial. Ethiopia's Prime Minister accuses Eritrea of mass killings and looting during the Tigray War, despite both sides being allies at the time. In his first public acknowledgement of Eritrean atrocities in a conflict that kills at least 600,000 people. We continue here covering the India-United States trade deal, and the US Trade Representative Jamieson Greer has highlighted a significant opportunity for India to diversify its supply chains and increase purchases of US products. He has stated that the US has been closely monitoring India's efforts to wind down purchases of Russian oil. Greer also revealed that there is a mutual understanding between the US and India to reduce technical non-tariff barriers to trade, with both countries recognizing US standards, while India is still maintaining some protection around agricultural goods. Greer announced that India has agreed to reduce tariffs on US exports, including a significant drop in industrial tariffs from 13.5% to 0%. Joining us now is Lieutenant Colonel Himanshi Singh, a Defence and International Relations Analyst, joining us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much for joining us here. Greer has said that India has a major opportunity to diversify supply chains and buy more US products. What specifics, apart from oil, of course, are realistically the US sourcing to shifting? What do you think India will move towards buying after this trade deal?
Good evening, Thomas. So good to see you. See, this trade deal is no doubt historic, but more of, it is a commercial transaction. It is not a friendly kind of a deal, because we've seen how Trump pushed India, that earlier the tariffs were 25%, then as a punitive measure, they increased it to another 25%, making it 50% because of the Indian side buying the Russian oil. Now, America wants that India to buy American oil, India will continue to buy some Russian oil because India can buy Russian oil, but for its own consumption and not for exports. So the American energy, which will be consumed by India, will be actually for the processing and then export. Because India has somehow have this network of having the refineries, which is going to be very soon the largest in the world. This trade deal, as announced by President Trump, I have not seen those documents because India is still deliberating on a lot of things. What actually will be there in the documents is yet to be seen. So India is very careful not to project its dependency, and it avoids any language, which suggests the alignments towards China, even through the subtext. So when Jamison Gear says that a lot of opportunities for India to diversify supply chain and to buy more US products, he's not talking about the trade volumes. He's talking about the re-engineering of global supplies in the post-China, post-pandemic and post-Ukraine world. So for United States, this deal serves three purposes. First of all, it's de-risking dependence on China by embedding India deeper into global manufacturing and consumption network. Secondly, creating a reliable democratic partner in the market of US energy, defense, aerospace, and high-tech exports. And thirdly, it is trying to ensure that strategic alignment is there, backed by economic interdependence, which is not a rhetoric. And for India, see, it is an opportunity which is double-edged. On one hand, there is a tariff reduction, no doubt, and market assessment to restore competitiveness for Indian exporters in US. But see, India is a country where the major livelihood of people depends on agriculture. So how much India is going to open that market, because Indian people are deadly against the GMO seeds which America provides. So the legitimate question is about trade balance, domestic capacity and strategic economy. So it is not a free trade in classical sense, but a managed strategic trades, which because of the economy and security logic. So we have to actually see if India is able to upgrade its manufacturing depth in coming times, or whether the export grows faster than imports, or whether India negotiates as a rule maker and not as a rule taker. So these are the few things which we have to see. But see, trade deals don't fail because of the tariffs. They fail because of the asymmetry in the preparedness. So we have to see how India is prepared for these new trade opportunities which are being given to it. Thomas.
And of course, a significant cut there from a 50% tariff that New Delhi was facing down to 18%. A huge cut. However, the two major concessions here, India agreeing to stop buying Russian oil, and a huge claim that India would buy $500 billion worth of US goods. First of all, how is this going to affect the strategic partnership that India has with Russia, first of all?
See, when US says that India is going to buy $500 billion a trade, we have to see that India is always gaining out of what business goes around with US. India's rupee has stabilized. Today, if we see the stock market after Trump's tweet, we've seen today the rupee has stabilized, which was earlier falling. So that is a good thing. And somewhere when the market opens, we have to see this trade deal is strategic. It's more than economic, it is strategic, because economic flows are instruments to cement geopolitical alignment against the system rivals. And here US sees China as a system rival because there's a lot of dependency which US has on China. So somewhere, to balance the trade deficit, long-term secure demands for US exports, and India is a good supply chain because it is a democratic country. So things are much, much stable here. So it is not going to weaken India's strategic autonomy. It is going to build domestic capability. And this is what America also wants, because somewhere America does not want a very strong China. And when it has a very strong economically and militarily strong India, it is a deterrence to China as well. So somewhere I feel that, it is going to strengthen India in the MSME sector, skilling, logistic, and regulatory predictability will be there. So I think it is a good strategic move by both India and US.
Okay, do stay with us as we turn to our next story. Ambulances departed Gaza's Rafah crossing as the first patients were evacuated to Egypt today after the crossing reopened. The World Health Organization confirmed that 5 patients, along with 7 companions, were transferred for medical care. This marks the first evacuation via Rafah since early 2025, when limited medical movements were allowed during a brief ceasefire. Over 18,500 patients remain on waiting lists, suffering from trauma injuries caused by the 2-year conflict, as well as chronic diseases such as cancer and diabetes. UNICEF reported that more than 3,000 of those waiting transfer are children. Gaza health authorities are prioritising patients based on the severity of their conditions. Lieutenant Singh joins us once again. Of course, this has made headlines. The Rafah corridor opens after 2 years. However, it's opening very much in limited capacity, with 20,000 people still on the waiting list. People trying to get out to get that urgent medical care are still facing these prolonged security checks, which led to a minimal amount of people being let through there. Far less than the 150 promised that are going to be let out through a day. Of course, people have died now waiting to get this medical aid that they need outside the Gaza Strip. How will Israel respond when it comes to criticism in their opening of this Rafah corridor between Egypt and Gaza?
See, Israel remains very, very skeptical because we also know last 2 years under the fragile ceasefire exposed the moral arithmetic of the modern conflict. So, thousands need evacuation and only just 5 are allowed. So this tells us very clearly that humanitarian access today is no longer a right. It is a negotiated concession which Israel is not ready to give. So as you said, almost 20,000 people, they need urgent care, highlights that healthcare system have actually collapsed. It has been systematically incapacitated, and hospitals without electricity, surgeries without anesthesia, children waiting for treatment that never arrives. So I think these symbols are of very selective mercy. Operationally, the process is very, very slow and bureaucratic, security heavy. Politically, we see the hostages are taken and ceasefire is calculated. Morally, it is very uncomfortable question. If life saving can be paused, filters and ration, I think we need to take another view at as our humanitarian laws. So Israel's security concerns and Egypt's sensitive borders and international diplomatic balances all converge here. But the patients on stretchers, they don't carry these flags, they carry the pain. So I think limited reopening serves another purpose. And I think it is optics management by Israel also, because I think now US need to push something, but US is not pushing. It is just waiting for these countries to reach some level. And I think unless Rafah becomes a consistent humanitarian corridor, it is not going to solve the problem. Gaza medical crisis is much deeper than just these people. I think history will not ask how many statements were issued, how much security measures were taken, but it will ask how many lives we could save. So I think somewhere even Israel need to look at these things, because fine, we can talk about security and other things, but these innocent people who actually need medical care, children need medical care, I feel Israel should allow more people to pass and go for medical care. Thomas.
Yes, Lieutenant Colonel Singh, thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX. Well, it's a great pleasure to talk to you as always. We now turn over to the United States, and Bill and Hillary Clinton have agreed to appear in person for depositions in Washington as part of the House investigation into late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein in a move to avoid a House contempt of Congress vote. The offer comes after months of resistance and as House Republicans moved closer to holding both the former president and former Secretary of State in contempt for not complying with subpoenas. House Oversight Chair James Comer says the terms of the offer still lack clarity, including dates, and he is reviewing next steps with his committee. Democrats on the panel say the Clintons have agreed to all requirements and expect the depositions to move forward. House leaders have temporarily paused contempt proceedings as talks continue. Joining us now is Dr. Satoru Nagao, a fellow at the Hudson Institute, joining us live from Tokyo. Thank you very much, Dr. Nagao, for joining us. This has been a long-running saga. Bill Clinton, the former president, a long-time friend of Epstein. We're running some of the photos now that have been released as part of the Epstein files. This relationship has known about, but is there going to be is there going to be a breakthrough from this investigation? And what difference does it make to the public that now the Clintons have agreed to testify?
In this case, of course, worry is midterm election, I think, because relation with Epstein is a big scandal and a bad image. So that's why in the November there is an election. Before it, they need to solve this issue as soon as possible, and it will not affect the midterm election. It's better tactics to win the election. So that's why as soon as possible is the key. In this case, if the Clinton family end the testimony and prove they are innocent, in this case, people focusing on President Trump instead of the Clinton. So that's why it is beneficial for Democrats. But if this scandal continues, both President Trump and President Clinton, in this case, it will affect both Republican and Democrat in the midterm election. So that's why both of two Republican and Democrats want to end this scandal far before the midterm election. So that is my current interest they have, I believe.
Do you think, of course, that we've seen multiple high-profile officials now with their careers destroyed? I mean, the likes of Prince Andrew, no longer now Prince Andrew, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is what he's called now, as well as Peter Mandelson in the United Kingdom. They both face huge scrutiny when it comes to their connections that they found in the Epstein files. Yet Bill Clinton, a man who has had, notably has had a close relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Do you think the American public view him in the same regard as these other figures that I've mentioned when it comes to the responsibility and indication of if or they did anything guilty?
Currently, so far, the detail of the relation with criminal Epstein is not clear. So in some case, in case of Andrew, his connection with Epstein is relatively deep, but in case of the Clinton, not so. So that's why, based on this, they try to solve the issue. If the relation is not deep, as soon as possible, they want to solve. But indeed, all of the documents the government collected hasn't published yet. And some cases still they are reading, so that's why they cannot publish it. And of course, some information is directly linked with more important political matter or political connection or the big scandal for the very important people. So that's why it is not easy to publish before they check carefully. So that's why it will happen later, but just now the image is running and without certain fixed evidence, I think.
Dr. Nagal, stay with us as we move on to another related development. And the UK Prime Minister is moving quickly following new developments linking Peter Mandelson to documents released in the US to connection to Jeffrey Epstein. A former spokesperson for Keir Starmer says the Prime Minister has asked officials to draft legislation that would allow Mandelson's peerage to be removed as soon as possible. Downing Street says an initial review of the documents has found that they may contain market-sensitive information related to the 2008 financial crash, raising serious concerns. The government also says safeguards around handling that information at the time appear to have been compromised, and the material has now been referred to police. The spokesperson added that the Prime Minister has told ministers he is not satisfied at all. The relevant information about Mandelson's links to Epstein has yet to come to light. Dr. Nagal joins us once again. What does this say to us about the accountability of people in powerful positions? That there are some institutions that even, as disgraced as some people are now, including Peter Mandelson, that they can still hold those positions of power like they can in the House of Lords in the United Kingdom?
Yeah, this Epstein scandal is indeed not just a criminal against a woman or something, but also something sensitive information has shared through this process. So that's why some cases, even if they're not published yet, some important relation has happened, and view from the government that it is not allowed for these kind of the people to stay in the government. That is a situation, I guess, but detail will be published later, I think, not just now.
Yes, Dr. Satoru Nagal, thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World. It's a pleasure to have you. We stay in Europe but head to Scandinavia for our next story. And a year and a half after Marius Borg Høiby was arrested after a violent episode at a woman's flat in Oslo, the son of Norway's crown princess has gone on trial in the biggest case to come to court for years in the country. Wearing a brown sweater and glasses, Høiby pleaded not guilty to 4 charges of rape as the public prosecutor detailed the 38 charges against him. Høiby's lawyer said he was a young man who deserved a fair trial and the press treatment of him had been anything but normal. The 7-week trial opened at Oslo District Court against a backdrop of almost daily revelations surrounding him and his mother, Crown Princess Mette-Marit. On the eve of the trial, it emerged that he had been detained for a 4th time in circumstances not unlike his initial arrest on suspicion of assault, making threats with a knife and violating a restraining order. French President Emmanuel Macron has announced that dialogue with Russian President Vladimir Putin is currently being prepared from a technical perspective. During a visit to a farm in eastern France, Macron clarified that while discussions are underway at the technical level, he is skeptical about Russia's willingness to conclude a peace agreement in the immediate future. He also stressed that France and European countries remain committed to supporting Ukraine, particularly as Russia continues its bombardment of Ukrainian civilians and energy infrastructure. Macron emphasized the need for Europeans to restore their own channels of discussion with Russia to lay the groundwork for future peace talks. Let's listen into his statements.
Cela se prépare et donc il y a des discussions qui se font au niveau technique pour préparer cela. Ça se fait aussi en transparence et en concertation avec le président Zelensky et avec les principaux collègues européens. Mais je pense que d'abord nous, aujourd'hui, nous continuons de soutenir l'Ukraine qui est sous les bombes, dans le froid, avec des attaques contre les civils et contre l'énergie ukrainienne par les Russes, qui est intolérable, et ce qui ne manifeste pas une vraie volonté de négocier pour la paix. Donc on soutient l'Ukraine et sa population pour résister. Ensuite, on prépare les discussions le jour d'après avec le travail de la coalition des volontaires pour les garanties de sécurité. Et dans ce cadre-là, il est important que les Européens, en effet, restaurent leurs propres canaux de discussion. C'est en train de se préparer d'un point de vue technique.
Et ce serait utile. Vous pensez que ce serait utile?
Je pense que ce serait utile, mais je ne pense pas aujourd'hui qu'il y ait disponibilité de la Russie à conclure une paix dans les prochains jours ou les prochaines semaines.
Well, that's all that we have time for this hour. Keep watching NewsX World for more international news updates.